Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Reddit Nuclear Revenge. Just a reminder to some listeners that Nuclear Revenge isn't always about destroying lives. These stories often contain violence or illegal actions that make it unsuitable for pro-revenge. With that said, this episode has 3 stories. We've got kids being pushed to their breaking point, a dad getting revenge for his daughter, and why you shouldn't threaten family dogs. I hope you stay for all the stories today, and subscribe for future videos. Always be careful who you mess with. Everyone has a breaking point. This story's titled, "The Time My Dad Turned Into a Rag Doll." This is my first time posting on any forum, so forgive me for the bad format. This story isn't mine but my dad's. He wasn't the one giving the revenge, but he was the one receiving it. Back in high school, my dad was kind of a dickhead. He bullied a lot of kids, but his main target was a fat kid named Johnny. My dad used to attack him verbally and physically, constantly, and used to throw buckets of garbage onto him. This went on for 2 years, until senior year. I guess, over the summer, Johnny has bulked up and lost a lot of weight. That didn't stop my dad though, as he still wanted that control over him. During lunch, on top of some staircase, my dad began to physically attack him again. After 5 minutes of him yelling and pushing Johnny, Johnny stood up, grabbed my dad by his neck, lifted him off the ground, and threw him like a rag doll down the stairs. It ended up breaking my dad's leg, and taking a chunk out of his head. Johnny got expelled, and my dad got suspended for 3 weeks. However, when he got back, he completely changed for the better. Turns out, getting your ass thrown down the stairs does wonders for your personality. My dad later started talking to Johnny through Facebook, and now they're on semi-decent terms. Sometimes, a badass dad is all you need to get revenge. This story's titled, "He Lost His Friends, His Car, His Job, and Nearly Lost an Eye." I've been putting this off, but this is really the only nuclear revenge I've ever dealt out in my life. A little history about where I was before all this. I had a very rocky relationship with my father, and my mom had just kicked me out at 19 with nowhere to go. My dad actually stepped up and helped me for the first time in my life by getting me into an apartment in my little hometown in South Idaho. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and started going to parties and doing things that I missed out on doing with friends in high school. I was a goody two-shoes up to that point, and a late bloomer who wasn't used to getting males' attention, meaning I was a virgin. I started hanging out at the park, playing horseshoes, and letting my friends get me absolutely trashed when I met a cowboy named Slick. I didn't have much of an interest in him, other than just talking about old western movies and actors from the silver screen of classic 1950s movies. Slick and I both worked for the same company, as did 98% of the small town we lived in, so we knew each other in passing. He started coming in to get horse meds and other vet supplies, and always asked me to wait on him. Okay, whatever. That was my job. One of our mutual friends invited me to a bonfire at their house, which was right across from where Slick was staying, in a bunkhouse. I went, not even expecting to see Slick there, and had actually taken one of my best friends with me to keep an eye out for me, because I've never been a trusting person, due to the past trauma as a kid. A few hours pass, we're all drinking, and Slick keeps putting his arms around me and trying to dominate whatever conversation I'm having with my friends, especially around my guy friends. I'm tipsy and not really caring about it too much, and go off with a few of my other friends in a group where we're gossiping and talking. The party is winding down. I don't feel comfortable driving home with any form of alcohol in my system, and Slick says he has a spare cot in his room that I can have. I didn't feel comfortable going, but my other friends assured me that Slick was trustworthy. We got to his room, there was no cot. Slick says that he'll sleep on the floor and we can watch Blazing Saddles because he'd heard it was one of my favorites. I said fine and crawled into his bed fully clothed with shoes. Well, I'm sure you can guess what happened, so I'm not gonna dive into the very unpleasant details. I didn't sleep the whole night. I just laid in bed in disbelief that what just happened actually happened. Once I knew he was asleep, I snuck out of his room and drove home, sobered by the experience. I don't know how long I sat in the shower, but the water ran cold and I called out sick from work for the next 2 days. Over the next few days, I had bruises that covered my entire body. I had bite marks and scratches and fingertip bruises everywhere. I also developed one of the worst UTIs I've ever experienced in my life and called the town clinic for an examination to make sure that everything was okay. Slick became an awful force in my life. When he wasn't bothering me at work, he was leaving dead rattlesnakes on my doorstep and telling all of our mutual friends and acquaintances how he put another notch on his belt. The revenge. My dad is a 6'8", giant Russian. He worked as a machinist for many years, making his already big hands thick and calloused, which is important for later. He's a very intimidating man and has a violent streak. Because I was on bad terms with my mom, I turned to him, fully trusting him as someone I could confide in. His wife had to take pictures of my bruises from my doctor's file to go with the assault report. My dad was livid, but he pushed his fury deep down and waited for later. Slick drove a really shitty Oldsmobile. He also liked to go drinking every day after work. A few of my friends had been filled in as to what Slick did, and thus, the rest of the town knew, as news spreads like a plague in tiny towns. Slick's crappy car mysteriously caught on fire outside of the busy bar, yet nobody's seen anything regarding how it started. 2 weeks after his car burned up, my hometown had its annual birthday celebration. My dad goes to it every year and catches up with friends he hasn't seen in a long time. This means also visiting the town's bar. He walked in, said hello to the owner, and demanded to know where the one called Slick was. The bar owner begged him not to make a huge scene, and just to keep things civil since he knew what my dad was there for. He told my dad that Slick was playing poker on the deck out back, and my dad went out looking for him. He found Slick and asked him if Slick knew who he was. Slick was disrespectful and said he didn't give a care who he was. He was busy playing poker with his friends. Strike one. My dad told him that I was his daughter and he needed to talk to him about respecting young women. Slick said, there wasn't anything about me to respect. Strike two. My dad tells Slick to get his ass out of the chair and speak to him like a man. Slick tells my dad to piss off. Strike three. My dad picked up Slick, who is 5'4" at the time and was 180-ish pounds, by his collar and stuck his thumb into Slick's right eye socket. My dad said he'd never heard a grown man scream like a woman before, and all he could do was smile about it. He dropped Slick on the ground and walked out of the bar. My dad was afraid that the cops were going to be coming for him, so he found me at the concession stand I was working at to tell me everything that had happened before he left back home. Nobody called the cops. Following week, the bosses at the company caught wind of what Slick had done to me and had launched an investigation against him because they noticed some very expensive equipment that went missing, with him being the only person around at the time. I should add that the company, though very large, was a tight-knit family-oriented business. Both of my parents worked there, and the bosses had known me since I was knee-high. They were very upset and ended up firing him and gave him 12 hours to vacate the company premises. I only saw Slick in person once more, about a month later, and his eye was still black. I had a panic attack when I seen him, so I didn't stick around long for howdy-doos. And that's my nuclear revenge story. It's long and a bit painful to remember, but I'm still healing and moving on from it 10 years later. My life has gotten better, and I know his life is miserable, and that makes me happy. Joking about harming pets is never a good thing to do. This story's titled, Do You Threaten My Dog? I Will Persecute You with a Shotgun. So this is my first post on this page. Also, English isn't my first language, so sorry for the grammar errors and everything else. Also, this happened when I was like 5 years old, and my dad told me the whole thing. When I was a cute young boy, I had the best and smartest dog that I ever had. His name was Brian, and he was an old German Shepherd that my family got from a nice old lady because she couldn't take care of him anymore. As I said, he was smart. For example, if my 2-year-old sister got outside, my dog would drag her inside the house again. Or, when I escaped from home to play in the woods, I was a savage kid. He would just guide me back to my home in the night, and a lot more things like that. I love that dog so much. Sadly, he passed away from cancer when I was 10 years old. So here goes the story. As I said, I had a dog when I was 4 to 5 years old, and I also had and also still have, an asshole uncle. Asshole uncle was, and still is, a piece of garbage, a parasite. He steals from his own family. Also, he used to drink a lot in family gatherings, and was disgusting with kids. And boy, he terrorized me. He screamed at me. He joked horribly at me, and his favorite threat when I was bad was, "I'm gonna kill your dog." My dad hit him once, and told him to stop, but he didn't. So one day, I was in the house of my grandma, and my mom and dad went to the market for something. Then asshole uncle arrived, and saw me. He started screaming at me, and saying that line over and over again, how he was gonna put down my dog, and I'd never see it again. I got scared and started to cry and run into the house, and he persecutes me, repeating himself. Then I saw it in all of its glory, behind a wardrobe. My other uncle's shotgun. I grabbed it. I was very big for my age, so I could handle its weight. And then I aimed at asshole uncle and said the coolest thing that I've ever said. I said, "Say it again. What are you gonna do?" And boy, he ran outside the house and fell to the ground. I repeated myself and went for him again. In that moment, the cute kid was gone. I was full of rage. He was screaming like an ape, and he crawled under a car. My dad screamed my name and took the shotgun away from me. My mom grabbed me while my dad opened the shotgun. Then he saw my uncle. He looked at me again and looked at the shotgun one more time. "It was loaded," he said. Asshole uncle screamed in horror one more time and started yelling at my dad. My dad just said, "This is all your fault. I told you, stop terrorizing Skywell." Asshole uncle never threatened me or my dog again. The funny part, the shotgun wasn't loaded at all. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed these stories today. If you want to submit your own stories, my Discord server is in the link below. Also, if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.